Okay, amazing. So we've heard about the creator opportunity from a very new ROI and very impressive study point of view from Jane, and then how do you actually build those into your strategy from Tom. I'm now going to share with you some insights from the long and the short form of it, which is some research System One and TikTok have been doing for a few years. It was released a few months ago at Cannes. Really looking at how the hell do we actually execute creative to a high quality in with creators. Before that, I want to share an interesting chat from our creative dividend work that we also released at Cannes with Mark Ritson this year, and we'll be releasing System One and Effie will be releasing a new book on this at the end of January. We actually found this really interesting data looking at customer touch points and what touch points we use in the top three channels selected by each campaign. And then we looked at the average brand effects that these campaigns that included one of these touch points in the top three. And I released this chart 6 months ago before Jane and the IPA and WPP came along with their incredible ROI, very robust study. And I was nervous because it put creators at the top of this chart on the far right in terms of their brand building capability, whether they can create campaigns that report more brand effects. That's awareness, trust, distinctiveness, differentiation, the kind of ability to grow memory structures that influence lasting behavior over years. So it's great to see the data lining up on this. Jane has shared with us that the ratio between long-term ROI and short-term ROI is incredibly high for creators. Actually, it was the highest in that research, and we're seeing it here as well. I think this has some interesting implications for all marketers, especially how we use and how we measure our creator campaigns. Measuring them over weeks is going to not capture all the value, and it's not going to make your spend, it's not going to represent and treat your spend fairly. So measuring creators over years is super important. So we'll release more on that in our new book at the end of January with Effie. Secondly, what wasn't in our long and short of it research was the creative variance of creator assets versus assets made by marketers. Now, it wasn't in this research because it was inspired by Jane's research later on. We went and looked at the standard deviation, the variance of fluency, distinctiveness of creator assets, and the emotional response of creator assets. And we saw that variation is twice as high compared to brand-made content. I think that points directly to why we're not seeing media optimization consistently lead to a meaningful, significant relationship with ROI. And because the creative variance is far too high. I'm going to share with you some things to focus on to close that gap and ensure that we actually create creative assets with high creative quality. But also, again, is a useful insight for marketers now attempting to stretch their budgets into creators. We must focus on creating higher quality versus quantity. We must work out what creators can deliver, the goods, not just spray and pray, because that leads to this huge gap in creative quality, which will mean that our spender is not returning the huge opportunities that creators provide. So the long and the short form of it is global research with TikTok, led by myself, the amazing Josh Fatiga in the global partnerships team at System One, and our huge partners at TikTok that shared all their brand and conversion lift studies with us for nearly 1,000 paid influencer or creator assets. Now, everything in this research has had paid media touch it, whereas we can circle back in the Q&A to understand a bit more about Jane's data with organic versus paid. But everything in the long and short form of it had been boosted by a brand and paid with paid reach. And we tested it with all these assets to link the creative quality to the brand and conversion outcomes with System One's Tester Ad Social and the real stars of the show, over 90,000 normal people TikTok users, not marketers, to really understand their creative response to assets. Now, to understand how we do that, we show a asset to a large group of users. And we measure two things. Two main things. We measure whether they can recall the brand correctly at what point in the asset. Specifically, we're looking for early brand recognition, what we call fast fluency at 2 seconds, which will show the power of that in this research. We also measure their emotional response, which we turn into our star rating. Our star rating really plays into two things. One, if the star rating is higher, the emotional intensity is higher, so you'll build more memory structures. But two, star rating focuses on positive emotion, which plays into the affect heuristic. If a brand feels good when it comes to mind, it influences behavior in an incredible way. It feels good, it feels like the right choice. So that's how we create our headline metrics in this research. We also capture the reasons why. But as Tom's pointed out already, we look at what distinctive brand assets have been used and recognized. There's incredible insight in this research, and that is buried on page 40, that I think is possibly the most actionable thing I've ever been involved in over the past few years, actually looking at how different distinctive brand assets cause brand recognition in short form, and which ones cause more skipping, leading to different growths in brand awareness. So we'll share that with you shortly. We also look at the spontaneous associations caused by advertising, because everything else is theoretical unless you've got that strategy in place to start with. We need our category entry points. We need our brand image that's going to change and differentiate our brands. So we need to get our strategy right as well, which Tom's been talking about. And we look at showmanship versus salesmanship, which we'll get into. How entertaining was an asset? And we also looked at in this research, and we're going to be focused on creator content today, but there's obviously 3 options, main options at your feet as marketers. You can edit your more traditional content, your TVCs, and put them into short form. You can shoot your own content, like this Stanley Cup example here, or you can send your brand to a creator and pray they include some distinctive brand assets. I'm being facetious, obviously, but a creator can create the ad for you. Our first learning, really, and Tom's talked about this already, is what's incredible is we see a 50% uplift in this research for creator content versus brand traditional content. That's 50% more attention seconds measured through skipping on the platform. But there's a huge issue. We see 50% less fast fluency, that early brand recognition. Now, this isn't the creator's fault. They're not marketers. You're the marketers. It's all our fault. We should be briefing creators and advising them how to bring our creative ideas and our distinctive brand assets into content more effectively to uplift this brand recognition like we do with our traditional assets. So there's a huge opportunity with attention and fixing that distinctiveness. Let's have a look at 2 examples of different uses of distinctiveness in creator short form. Amazing. I mean, he was smoking hot, so maybe we watch it again. But I'm not too sure what brand it was for, as opposed to this asset.
Little Moons has had a glow up. They challenged me to create their brand new logo in 3D and in cake. Challenge accepted. So for this cake, I baked 2 round ball cakes inspired by the flavour passion fruit and mango. Once baked, I cut the cake to make layers, then filled with a passion fruit and mango infused buttercream. I gave the cake a bit of dusting to bring that little moon to life. Now comment below what you think of this cake and if you'll give it a taste.
Incredible. The creative idea is the damn logo, and he speaks the brand name as it opens up. Huge difference as we can see in creative quality in terms of early and in fact final and distinctiveness from an asset. So we must approach this as marketers, because when we look at the brand awareness lift and the brand image lift, this is through the studies that TikTok run for their clients, matched with the System 1 test you had social data, we can see that the best assets for early brand recognition. That's fast fluency. If creative assets get it right, they are the best at building awareness and brand image change. That's key for growing brand distinctiveness and differentiation. So this is worth caring about. We must brand early and help creators, and that really takes advantage of all the things that Tom has talked about of why creators are special in terms of a channel that we can choose from. So I've got 2 lessons to win in short form. One is we must entertain, and 2, it must be distinctive entertainment. We must fight the finger. You know, you could lounge around and get very depressed about how Tom's talked about it already. Media budgets are moving into lower paid attention and more skippable media formats. This is actually a huge opportunity for marketers that know what they're doing, and it makes creativity more important. If you take advantage of the mass affordable reach that these new channels give you, and you use creativity to stop that scroll, to fight the finger, you see huge uplifts, as Jane's already showed us in her research. What do I mean by more entertainment? Well, Orlando Wood, System 1's Chief Innovation Officer and author of the books Lemon and Lookout with the IPA, has linked the research of Ian McGilchrist, looking at the different modes of attention, the broad attention versus the narrow attention, to advertising. And we define these creative features as showmanship creative features. Creative features that don't assume our attention, but in fact, they earn it. They speak to the 95% of people who aren't in market looking to buy Little Moons today, but might in the future. They build future demand, like character, a story unfolding. Or actually, my favorite is sotto voce, which is Italian for under the voice. A soft, hushed voice, or a pause, perhaps, draws our broad attention. Let's have a look at this incredible asset, creator asset, that uses showmanship to earn attention. Incredible. And I am brand loyal. Brand loyalty does exist, and it's me to Guinness, but I am partial to a Murphy's every now and then. The opposite to showmanship is salesmanship. Why should you care about showmanship? Showmanship is important because when you look at the top number of short form assets that include the most, this is top quartile of the showmanship creative features, they lead to more memory lift, more brand awareness lift, and more brand image lift. We can see the power of entertainment on short form to stop the scroll and grow our brands. Here we go. Dramatically different to showmanship is salesmanship. Let's take a look.
95-cent David protein bars are available right now in the TikTok shop for the next 24 hours only. Guys, go and check out the link below to apply your coupons. You guys get over 60% off on these. They have every flavor plus free shipping. Give them a try at this price while you guys can.
Amazing. So we're being hard sold to. Many words on screen, a reason to believe, a call to action. Go buy now. It assumes I care about David Bars. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, though, salesmanship, because, you know, we've just passed Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Maybe your CFO is giving you a call and he's very concerned about the lack of David Bars you've sold that week. Salesmanship leads to almost double the conversion on short form measured by TikTok. The more these salesmanship creative features that an asset has, the more conversion you get on TikTok. And this should terrify you, and this is possibly the greatest insight in the long and the short form of it. It damages brand growth. The more you optimize for this rational salesmanship, the less memory, awareness, and image you change. And we've been going on about this as marketers for when I was still in high school, or whatever the school was called before that. You know, the long versus the short. I think we need to reposition it as we should make our lives easier as marketers. If you optimize for rational creativity, targeted media, etc., you go after the short, it means you won't be clocking off at 4 o'clock next year. You won't be going to the pub. You'll be working harder, trying to sell more. We should focus on building that lasting demand. Sure, salesmanship converts more, but it doesn't build brand. Unlike entertainment, it builds brand, but because it stops the scroll, and because we see this lift in the emotional response with showmanship and the attentional response, it also converts as well. It doesn't convert as hard as salesmanship, but it converts harder than not showmanship sense. So we should, from a creative strategy point of view, when we're approaching short form, be understanding of how can we make our assets more entertaining, and because that will compound the effects of everything we do. Quite like this brilliant example of showmanship.
Can you hold my jaw, bruv? £25 protein, 109 calories. Lovely stuff.
Character, a sense of place, drama, a story unfolding. I personally think it would have been hilarious if he didn't quite make the tube, but that's not for me to say. I love the team at Huel and they do some amazing creative work. This specific asset nearly scored a 5-star in System 1's testing. It's very emotional with TikTok users. However, this specific asset really struggled with fluency. Only 9% of people recognized the brand in it quickly. That's why distinctive entertainment is really important. We must use distinct entertainment. When we look at the assets with the highest amount of showmanship and those that manage to brand early, they cause huge lift in awareness and image for large and challenger brands. But it's really important for challenger brands, perhaps like Huel, to brand early because you don't trade on that distinctiveness and equity you've already built up. So please use distinct entertainment. Now, the big reveal, how do you do that? We looked at the types of distinctive brand assets used in the first 2 seconds of all the short form assets in this study with TikTok. I guide your eyes to the top left of this chart. A logo edited onto an asset. Sure, it gets really high early brand recognition. It causes a large lift in distinctiveness, but it causes nearly 50% more skipping if you simply and perhaps lazily edit a logo onto the start of your asset. And this causes people to skip on. It actually leads to an average decrease in brand awareness gains by campaigns if you edit your logo at the start, but then guide your eyes over to the green distinctive brand assets on the right. A logo in context, integrating the brand into the creative idea from the very start of the creative process, like Tom talked about. It gets similar levels of brand recognition, and it doesn't cause skipping. Think creators holding your product, wearing your product, being in your retail place, shop. I also want to point you to celebrities. I was in a very sticky situation once working in a brand where we're about to go to the casino of fame and hire a celebrity to be our mascot. If we did that, I bet you would have put that celebrity at the start of every distinctive, every short form ad because it stops skipping. And it does. We can see a slight lift in not skipping, but it causes no additional brand recognition because they're not distinctive brand assets. Unlike fluent characters like Kevin the Carrot in the UK for Aldi, Geico Gecko in the US, these are brand-owned celebrities that we can use that don't cause skipping and get high early brand recognition. And finally, I want to point you to audio. Modern marketers need to be asking themselves, what does my brand sound like? You know, we've entered the screen multiverse. When you're watching TV, you're on your phone and your laptop. You're playing with your dog. You're playing the piano. Whatever you do in your spare time has got nothing to do with me. But you're looking at the TV less. But perhaps the world's greatest insight is you can't close your ears. So audio is becoming really important. And we can see that in short form as well. Speaking the brand name, like that Little Moons example, using a sonic asset or even a jingle. Let's have a look at distinctiveness. Distinctive entertainment in action. Well, that was shorter than I thought. Very distinctive. Let's have a look at some distinctive entertainment again. I think we get where this is going, but they're making some dumpling shoes and they brand very early, which is brilliant. Let's have a look at my favorite creators, which prove why you should be hiring professionals to do your work. Let's have a look. It's just brilliant. I recommend you follow them. They're called Make Me an Offer for some reason on TikTok and Reels.
When my parents explored a big old house.
Be quiet while I assess the situation. Look, there's a sign.
I didn't bring my handbags. I haven't got any money.
Does anyone want the toilet?
No.
There's the buggy that's going to pick us up. Lovely. You two are going to get in the back here.
Yeah.
Hold on tight.
Look at the lovely garden.
It's like Jurassic Park.
Welcome to Petworth House. This way.
Huge place.
Coffee shop. Your head is framed by this man's boobs.
Yeah, lovely.
Just see.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You get the picture. I've been to Petworth House with my boyfriend, and I promise you it's not that interesting, but they make it look entertaining but distinctive as well. Everything these guys do is branded at the very first frame, perhaps because their son actually is a proper creative and is taking the briefs and doing it properly. Really interesting. And when you see that as well, the comments are insane. These are the only ads I'll watch. So when people push back and say you can't be distinctive in the first few seconds, send them this account and show it's possible and how incredible it can be.